stop the sound there. Stop the and oops. I should get back onto Zoom and find that link, or onto YouTube. Streaming. All right. Today's and now I will turn that off. Okay. Recording to the cloud. So we're recording. It's good to see everybody today. This is the latest installment of the Baseline Protocol office hours. Try to do these every Wednesday at noon, US Eastern. And it's good to have folks that are just trying to work on Baseline and have questions, or baselining, I should say, and have questions to be able to dial in, get those questions answered. This is just to help people out with knowing where to go, what to do, how to get involved, what things that you might be confused about, anything you want to talk about, really. So I will pause for 7 seconds and make everybody uncomfortable while people decide who's going to speak first. No, nobody.
Hi, John.
Hi, Jan.
Hi, John.
And Jan wins the Brave Soul award.
John, just question actually. I have a few questions. Can I post on the Q&A session or chat?
Can you post on the chat? Yeah, you should be able to. I made you a panelist.
Yeah, because open that. Let me see that.
Yeah.
I can put in the chat or Q&A session. Q&A session doesn't seem to let me to enter the questions.
You should be able to ask questions here.
Yeah, let me see that. How can I open the chat?
Yeah, click the chat button and then hit all panelists.
Yeah. Okay, let me.
All panelists
okay.
attendees.
Yeah, I just have. Let me see that. Yeah, I just paste the. There's a few questions there. Let's see that. Yeah. Okay, that's our questions.
Oh wow.
Okay.
Wow, prepared questions.
Yeah,
we're moving up in the world. Could somebody who can get to the YouTube video, the YouTube live stream on the Baseline channel, Baseline Protocol channel, be great to post these to that. And if I do it, I won't be. It's kind of harder for me to do it from here. So yeah, let's go through them. How to set up the UI to register a new participant. Is it already supported in existing registry? Yeah, there's a conversation in the Slack channels that I saw last night. I think Karthik from Ernst & Young answered a pretty good answer for this. So if you go into the general channel in the Slack, here I'll make sure everybody knows.
Yeah.
If somebody doesn't know, Baseline Protocol org. That website will get you the links, fast links into the Slack inviter and other things. And in that answer, I remember him saying that, yeah, it really is kind of right now a hard code. experience, right? So, this is early days. The protocol is a technique. It's never going to be a product. It's never going to be a platform, a scheme, a token, or any of those things. It's a technique for using the mainnet in traditional corporate IT, among other things, in a way that security officers won't lose their minds over. And from that perspective, it is something where, right now it's several components that will go into the specification, like there's a thing called the org registry, which right now all you're really doing is saying, okay, these are my counterparties. Here are their endpoints. Here are their accounts, and that's what's going into the org registry. And you do that right there in the YAML file. And as things grow, and as I expect there will be any number of phone books out there for knowing for sure that this company that you think you're dealing with is actually the company you're dealing with. You'll be able to pull that into your org registry, and which is based on ERC 1820. So does that answer your question reasonably?
Yeah, actually, I saw the answers. Basically, my understanding that looks like the participant register from the UI currently is not fully supported from Radix 34 yet, right?
Well, bear in mind that UI is just a demo, right?
Yeah, just a demo.
It's really a reference implementation to say this is how you do it, right? In our current understanding.
But the thing is, like, in future, does any the baseline team will adding such a support to support this registration through the UI? That's a part of your plans?
Let me answer it this way. The baseline protocol community, the initiative, is from at least from where I sit, it's here to advance the standard, develop a standard, so that we, right now this is our conjecture about what the standard would look like. And as more people enter, and it's growing extraordinarily fast, more companies will come in and add their voices to the chorus, and we will ultimately have something that we merge into a consistent view of which components ought to go in, what must be represented in those components, what should not be in those, right? So basic standards kinds of write up. And in that, even today, a talented professional team of developers should be able to implement the baseline technique in production today. There's nothing really standing in your way. So what the community's job is to make it easier for people to do that by adding more tools, reference implementations, code, help, support, that sort of thing. But because it's not a product and not a platform, it's not like there's going to be any group here that would be, saying, here's the product or the platform support for that, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand that, actually. Yeah, so from we are saying that, if we want to, support this participant registration, and it seems like that will be handled by the back end, right? So yeah.
And I think that right now the biggest, the most interesting thing is clearly you have needs on this, and to tell the community what your needs are is participating in the community. That's what is really needed right now, is people like you saying, this is how we need it to be. We need to make sure that the specification has these attributes, right? I want to say this loud and clear. Baseline protocol as a technique has no view on how the world evolves in terms of identity, right? That is for other people. There are other projects, good ones, worrying about identity. The baseline protocol technique will utilize whatever comes out of that and bakes out of that whole process. I sure wish personally that would folks would get on with it, because we really need some kind of a corporate. I mean, you don't want to be thinking you're dealing with a company and discovering that you're sending a lot of data to somebody that's not that company. So from our perspective, that's, we are consumers of, the world of identity, but I wouldn't say that baseline is the identity. There's nothing about the baseline protocol that says we have anything to say about, we're not the last word in identity. Does that help?
Yeah, that definitely helps. Yeah. So the thing is, like, we are actually building an application, right, based on the baseline. So let's say, we need a certain point that to say, if there's a new real, participant, buyer, seller to register, use our application, definitely we need a kind of a guidance, or so need a guidance on how going to make them register smoothly, right? So that's we're looking for. Yeah, I understand that UI is okay.
Your application, what you would do is you would add the, you effectively directly inject, and you'd have to onboard them through your own application interface.
Yeah.
According to your own rules. And would it be awesome if you could just go to a global phone book and pull those attributes down and know that they are, they are attested and assured? That'd be awesome. Today, you would do that just like you would normally in any application that you would build, right? Mm-hmm. So, and what's nice is you don't have to go through the months of negotiating some kind of a consortium deal. You can just start adding participants. Mm-hmm. And I would just do that straight in your own application layer.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Number 2, existing 3 participants, or is this a follow-on? Supplier 1, supplier 3, statically pre-configured. Yeah, so I think that answers number 2 as well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And we're building an application based on baseline. I usually say baseline technique, just because baseline is turning out to be like a really good word. People love it, and it's growing in sort of the zeitgeist and the people's mentality. But it's such a good word that sometimes people mistake this for a product or a platform. And so I usually try to say baselining or the baseline technique, okay, or protocol. So based on this technique, you're using an application. You're building an application where a participant, like a buyer, performs a business transaction, like a master service agreement. And then, the organization, the wallet question. So who's paying, right?
Right.
I've got a big question for you. Are your customers, or your prospective customers, are they companies that are okay with holding crypto in order to pay gas, like say in Ethereum, or not?
Yeah, it rather depends, right? So, for example, if we providing kind of a subscription fees, right? So the register our platform, they pay that from a subscription plan. In that case, we don't want them to pay it again. Maybe we want our application to pay this gas cost for them.
Yes.
That kind of scenario. So I
without
think we can
becoming like a money transmission system or having to be regulated in that way, right?
Yeah.
Yes, you are hitting one of the most important things that, and there is a project going on, at least in one company that I know of, around a gas service on Ethereum, at least, right? And I need to, to be academically honest, I need to say the job is the mainnet. Ethereum is my point of view, personal point of view, about a pretty good blockchain to do that job. And it is true that the reference implementation is Ethereum, but the pattern, the technique, doesn't care what the common frame of reference is, right? We just think that the Ethereum mainnet's a pretty good candidate for that, right? But in that case, you do need to be able to deal with the gas issue. And there are a lot of companies that cannot hold crypto to pay gas, even though it's, gas is really just effectively an IT charge to make sure that the system's running. And it's not expensive to do, that sort of use of gas is not onerous. So I think it is appropriate. And actually, Karthik is just joining, so I'll make him panelist, I think it's entirely appropriate to see services appear to say, hey, we'll pay the gas and then we'll bill you later or what have you. And we'll bill it as an IT charge, not as a, you're not speculating on cryptocurrency, right? You're just basically solving the halting problem and incenting people to maintain the system, right? That I think you can expect to see some services pop up, at least one, this year, which cover that. So probably by the time you can go production level, I should think that there will be a service. I know of one, and I just don't feel at liberty to out them yet. I don't know that they're ready to stand up and say that they're going to provide it. And we are on a public, we are streaming onto YouTube, so I don't want to say something I can't take back. Otherwise, I would tell you who it was. But I would expect that. Is that a good answer for you?
That's right. Yeah, that's I'm thinking that in that kind of scenario, if our customer don't want to pay that, I think we can configure the application to have application, which means our application have a wallet, right? We can configure that, make our application to pay the gas, the cost.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's meta transaction approaches, and there's other ways of approaching it. I know Karthik, who's on the line, has some good ideas about this. But yeah, I think so. You're validating that your customers probably don't want to be holding crypto to pay gas, right?
Yeah, that could be could be possible. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we're hearing elsewhere as well. And so,
okay.
Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity for somebody. But it's not just about the technology; it's also about being able to handle things like spending money and then getting money later. Right? You're going to have to be able to handle that financially. So it's not like any old company can handle that. And also they have to be trusted in a lot of ways, right?
Yep.
So I know at least one company that would be a good candidate for that. So how will the IoT system, so the messenger service via the IP address for messenger key, they do communicate through messaging, right? So that's the first step, is messaging. Usually, especially or in particular when, which is almost always the case, you're initiating a new workflow step where the counterparty doesn't have the data that needs to be held in that state of consistency, right? So you got to get that over to them. My preferred messaging service is Carrier Pigeon, or quantum telepathy also works. But you need to get it to them, right? And then you need to have them sign it and then effectively what the proof is saying is that these two things are the same. Or these n things are the same. I was really excited, and maybe Karthik, you can go off mute, right? Can't Karthik?
Yeah, can you hear me?
You can. Great. Karthik is one of the founding engineers on baselining and knows as much or more than anybody else on it. And I was excited about the NATS team showing up, right? They seem to have some pretty good ideas about the messaging issue. I've been joking that you could use Core to Flows as the messaging layer, which would amuse me, right? To have to be able to absorb at least Core to Flows into an Ethereum or a mainnet activity I think would be fun. Karthik, what are your points of view about what needs to be there for the messaging service? I mean, we created the messaging service on Whisper almost as a point to say, don't do it this way, right? Just to say, Whisper is definitely not the way you'd want to go into production. Karthik, I want to stop talking and let you get in here.
Sure. So, I mean, the core principle that when we started off our work on Baseline was that there are definitely aspects of mainnet interaction with respect to how we are interacting with the mainnet and what we are posting on the mainnet and so on. And separately is the equally important principle of data consistency and providing the ability to the entities or the different users of the system the sense or the trust of non-reputability of their data. So that's where I think while other components solve each of the other sort of problems, like for example, use of ZKP solves for say proving private statements or private business logic statements, so to speak. Use of mainnet is, for example, for having mainnet as a common frame of reference that everyone can have their systems sort of synchronized to, internal legacy systems synchronized to. But then there's the aspect of actual synchronization itself, and that's where the question was around using a secure point-to-point messaging system, which provides all the guarantees of a distributed system in terms of the availability, latency, redundancy, and so on, but also has the advantages of a decentralized messaging service like Whisper. So that was our initial rationale for adopting or at least leveraging Whisper as part of Radish implementation. We did note some of the actually the work done by Brian and Sam, who are also part of the core baseline team, have done extensive analysis on testing out Whisper, especially in terms of hosting Whisper in a cloud environment and running it on even running it on a different consensus, not necessarily proof of work, but use something like RINCP or a proof of authority type consensus to say have better performance of messages being communicated instead of having to rely on quote unquote slower proof of work type consensus for message synchronization. So anyway, the long story short,
would you say that if you don't mind me interrupting, would you say that we get this question a lot, how would state channels or plasmas or that sort of thing, side chains, operate within this construct or this framework? And I have to think that in a way that's what messaging is doing, right? And so you could use a side chain for the messaging layer, or you could, but that's effectively what you're doing, right? You're saying, okay, I've got this.
Yeah, essentially, yes. It's a channel where you're ensuring that there is a secure communication so that there is no information leakage and there is data consistency. I think that is actually the main point in which why extensive analysis or extensive work is being done on NATs is because it provides a network level quote unquote assurance of the availability of data. And another aspect of something that we're working on right now to improve upon the baseline code base itself is to have some semblance of locking when things are changing on the net, so that if there are race conditions, we at least gracefully handle those race conditions while people are waiting for, say, their commitment to be pushed up to the chain, or say for their transaction to be registered on the chain, etc. So, I mean, permissioning is one thing, but leaving aside access controls, the idea is that we would want to use a messaging channel, but that messaging channel could be anything. It could be a layer 2 solution. It could be a private communication channel. It could be Whisper or NATs, or even straightforward API call, authenticated API call that you would want to have. But the idea is still to make sure that the DB lock type scenarios that occur on the blockchain, or race conditions that occur on blockchain where two entities are trying to update the state of a supposedly same object. So that's sort of the core principle for using the messaging, or rather the constraint or added consideration that needs to be kept in mind, I guess, while taking into account any type of messaging service technology.
Thanks, Karthik. I think with that, that's a pretty good opportunity. We've got 5 minutes left. Anybody have some other burning questions? Bring those up. But I'll also, while that's happening, I'll keep my chat window open there if anybody has questions. One of the things I'd like to do on these calls going forward is do a quick overview of what a lightweight roadmap is for things. And Karthik just mentioned one of them. We've been calling this rebasing and debasing. So if you have a baseline record and somebody changes the record out of order, you've debased the record. And how do you rebase it? How do you prevent a user from, or at least alert the user that they're about to do that? That's one project. There's another, before that, there are projects around multi-party workflow steps, easily creating a new workflow step and integrating it to the previous workflow step if that's appropriate. And then once you have that, and we have a new workflow step that's easy to create and quick to deploy, then and has tools around doing that, then you've got the question of what's the next workflow step. So for example, in our POC, we were using purchase orders as a key workflow step. Well, somewhere after purchase order is an invoice. And now you have something that can be tokenized as an asset. So that's a project that tokenization, I know Karthik it's near and dear to Karthik's heart and a lot of other people, is how do you go from just saying, hey, yeah, we have some records that are consistent and we have a workflow that has continuity that, where we know we haven't broken any rules along the way. But now we have some data that represents a real asset that we want to be able to trade, in some way that also doesn't give away our relationships with other parties or inappropriately indicates to somebody lurking what's going on with our business, right? So that's a neat trick. So being able to use the mainnet with a baseline record that is now a token in such a way that it's not only private, but stealthy. Imagine if you're a big company, your competitor probably would love to know how many invoices you have that you're factoring or trying to sell the short-term debt for. So that's another project. And there are platforms like, let me shamelessly plug my own company, Codify, Consensus Codify, that have a real point of view about that sort of thing, and are building great technology and tools and platforms that really are products and platforms for tokenization and asset management. So I try not to plug my own stuff, but I just did. So sorry about that. Karthik, you have anything else to say on that? Other key projects that you want to let people know are coming that they might want to get involved in?
I think the ones that you mentioned are pretty significant, John. I think tokenization or managing tokens or having a way to, like, what does it mean to baseline a token? Like when we say baseline a document, we have a perspective on what it means to baseline around like data synchronization, privacy, consistency, common frame of reference using the mainnet, and so on. Now, how does that translate into a token? Especially now that the token is a document embedded with a monetary or economic value. That would have repercussions on how the tokens are managed from a smart contract perspective, security perspective, and also how they're managed from a zero knowledge perspective. So I guess I would say that that's probably one of the main areas that at least I have visibility into. The other area is around generally creating a baseline package, more so to say that baseline is NPM package or a set of NPM modules under a common package repository, and these
or rather you package baseline compliant components, right? You could choose your own components, but the standard would say these are the ones that are compliant, right?
Yeah. I think principally what we're trying to get it as, like, any reference implementation or any implementation of baseline could leverage baseline as, say, a library. So I could say import baseline contracts or import baseline circuits or import baseline connectors or providers. And in your use case, you should be able to use those existing methods to be able to feed your data or connect your system or make or add custom parameters to data attributes and so on. So we are in the
Plug
works
in
with
your own
like,
service for another, right? So I mean, probably one of the things that's important is participants in the community. We want to make sure that we design things so that basically everything is optional or pluggable, right?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Everything is pluggable. I mean, we do recommend or suggest that there are like some core components that are there, dependent. I mean, regardless of how the customer or the client or the user or developer user, for that matter, would have a choice of which technology they want to use. Like, for example, if they do not want to use, say, the public mainnet, and they would rather use something like a consortium type private blockchain, the the concept would still hold, or rather, the library or the package would still hold. That's a basis by which we are trying to work on this. Right now, it's like 4 or 5 of us working on it, and it's sort of all over the place. We are rationalizing it and cleaning it up so that it's reflected on master.
Awesome. So we're 2 minutes over time, so we'll take our exit at this point. But I will just say that the baseline roadmap is live. It's public. You got to use ZenHub to look at it, and members of the steering committees have access to it. You can find out how to get on the steering committee from the documentation docs.baseline-protocol.org, and folks who are taking accountability for these various projects get on the steering committee. That's doesn't you don't have to pay for that. You don't have to be a part. You don't have to be a sponsor of any kind. You can be anybody and be part of this and to contribute to the code base. This is an openly governed open source entity under the governance of the OASIS Open Standards Body, which is a venerable organization that's been around for 40 years or so, and is behind a lot of the internet standards that are out there. And with that, we'll be here every week. We'll talk more about roadmap, new projects, ideas, and any of your questions. So with that, thanks everybody. Jan, thank you so much for those great questions, especially. And if anybody, I actually do have to go right now, but get on Slack, anybody that had a question that didn't get to ask it, and I'll be right there. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much. And Baseline team. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Feel free to connect on Slack.